A jobless drifter from Colorado, George Nada roams across America searching for a better life. His journey leads him to Los Angeles, a city of towering skyscrapers and endless opportunities. Hoping to find stable work, he visits a job center where many others share his struggle. During his interview, George recounts how businesses in his hometown shut down, leaving countless people unemployed. However, the job center worker, indifferent to his hardship, dismisses him due to a lack of experience. Disheartened, George forces a smile and exits. Wandering the streets aimlessly, he encounters a passionate preacher speaking to a small crowd. The preacher warns that demons have seized control of the ruling class, manipulating ordinary citizens. He urges people to wake up and break free from their influence. Not wanting trouble, George moves on when he spots a police car nearby. As he continues walking, he notices a man transfixed by a mindless TV commercial in a store window. Shrugging off the odd sight, George presses forward and eventually finds a temporary homeless shelter. That night, exhausted, he watches as a woman in the neighboring house becomes entranced by a TV program featuring a self-absorbed celebrity who believes they will never age. Sighing deeply, George leans back in his chair, lost in thought. The next morning, George arrives at a construction site, hoping to secure a job. Initially, the foreman turns him away, explaining that only union workers are hired. But after some persuasion, the foreman relents and agrees to take him on, negotiating his wages. Though relieved to have work, George won't receive payment for a few days, leaving him without a place to sleep once again. Noticing his distress, a fellow worker named Frank offers to take him somewhere with food and shelter. George hesitates at first, but eventually follows him. As they walk, the two men strike up a conversation and quickly find common ground. Frank leads George to a community of kind-hearted people who have also come to Los Angeles seeking a better future. The camp thrives on mutual support, and even the children feel safe there. A man named Gilbert promptly assigns George a small task to help improve the camp. When lunchtime arrives, George receives a generous portion of warm, nourishing food. As they eat, Frank shares his story with George. Like him, Frank left his hometown in search of work to support his family, who remain in Detroit. Frustrated, he speaks about the wealthy elite who enrich themselves while shutting down factories, leaving countless workers unemployed. His patience has run thin, and he warns that if another plant closes, he's ready to take drastic action. Frank believes survival is a battle, even among the working class, and jokingly tells George they are competitors in the fight for a better life. George, however, remains hopeful, determined to rebuild his future through hard work. Later that evening, George strolls through the camp and notices some residents eagerly watching a TV commercial for fake nails. Suddenly, the screen glitches and a distressed man appears, delivering an urgent message. He claims they live in an artificial reality, manipulated by an unknown force. According to him, a group of scientists discovered that extraterrestrial beings emit a signal that puts people in a trance, stripping them of critical thought. Poverty is rising and social injustice is worsening, yet people remain oblivious. However, the viewers dismiss his words, complaining only about headaches before switching the channel. Nearby, George spots a blind preacher echoing every word from the interrupted broadcast. Just then, Gilbert rushes over to him. Though George can't hear their conversation, he senses tension. In a hurry, Gilbert guides the old man toward a church within the camp's grounds. Watching them leave, George gets the feeling that they are hiding something. The next morning, George encounters Gilbert at the camp's entrance and asks him about the previous night. Gilbert explains that the church runs a communal kitchen for the homeless, and he stayed behind to tidy up. He also mentions that he sings in the church choir and is heading to rehearsal. Once again, the same unsettling broadcast appears on TV, urging people to stop the mysterious signal controlling their minds. The residents, suffering from severe headaches, are relieved when the transmission abruptly ends, switching back to a baseball game. Uneasy, Gilbert hurries back to the church, and this time, George decides to follow him. As he approaches, George hears the choir singing inside, which reassures him that he won't attract suspicion. Entering cautiously, he is shocked to discover a small chemical laboratory and a cryptic message on the wall. "They live, we sleep." George notices a tape recorder playing a loud choir performance. However, it's merely a distraction to mask the sounds of a secret gathering taking place behind a nearby wall. In the adjacent room, Gilbert, the man from the television broadcast, and other members of their underground group are attempting to hack the channel again. Their goal is to extend the transmission and reach a larger audience. The group wants to recruit more people to spread their message more effectively. As George eavesdrops, he accidentally stumbles upon a hidden storage room filled with boxes. Choosing to investigate later, he carefully closes the vault and turns to leave, only to run into the blind priest. Sensing George's presence, the priest touches his face and hands before releasing him. Instantly recognizing him as a laborer, the priest begins speaking passionately about the revolution. This unsettling encounter makes George uneasy, and he rushes out of the church. As he flees, the priest shouts after him, insisting that George will eventually return. Suddenly, a police helicopter appears and circles the church, making the group inside anxious. After a while, the helicopter departs. George, curious about the situation, borrows binoculars from a local teenager and continues observing. He sees Gilbert and other members carrying boxes out of the church and loading them into a vehicle. Just then, Frank approaches, interrupting George's surveillance. George immediately shares what he's seen, but Frank, wanting to avoid trouble, warns him not to get involved. As the vehicle loaded with boxes drives away, George keeps watch on the church for the rest of the day. However, nothing unusual happens. That night, police surround both the camp and the church. The residents are bewildered, unsure of what crime they are being accused of, and stand in silence observing the scene. Without warning, the police begin demolishing the camp using bulldozers, destroying tents and trailers. Panic erupts as people scatter in fear. George watches in horror as the officers mercilessly tear down the homes of innocent people. The police apprehend the blind priest and the man from the TV broadcast. Though they struggle to resist, the officers beat them until they are lifeless. Anyone who fails to escape meets the same grim fate. Unable to help those already captured, George spots a terrified teenager hiding in a corner. He quickly rescues the boy, and together, they barely manage to evade the police. Seeking refuge, they climb to the upper floors of a ruined church. Wandering through the abandoned corridors, they eventually find a room where other survivors are hiding. Confused and shaken, the group spends the entire night in shelter, still not understanding why the police raided them. At dawn, the survivors cautiously emerge to survey the aftermath of the attack. The camp is unrecognizable, looking as if a hurricane had swept through it. Amid the destruction, they come across a television in the middle of the ruins. Miraculously, it still works, playing cheerful advertisements as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, George returns to the church to investigate the secret vault. The provocative message that was once on the wall has now been covered up following the previous night's raid. Searching the pantry, he discovers a single surviving box, identical to the ones Gilbert had hurriedly taken away. Before he can inspect it, a patrol car passes by, forcing George to hide. Once he finds a safe spot, George opens the box, only to be disappointed by its contents: sunglasses. Unsure of their purpose, he hides the box in a trash can and takes one pair with him. As he wanders the city, curiosity gets the better of him, and he puts them on. Instantly, his surroundings shift to black and white, revealing a world unlike anything he has ever seen. Through the glasses, familiar advertisements and billboards now display hidden messages such as obey, marry, consume, buy, don't think, and watch TV. Magazines no longer contain glossy images, but instead showcase manipulative commands. The most disturbing discovery, however, is that some seemingly ordinary people now appear as grotesque creatures. Doubting his own eyes, George repeatedly removes and wears the glasses to confirm what he's seeing. The man standing before him truly has an alien-like appearance. The creature watches him suspiciously, but does nothing. Looking at money, George sees the phrase, "This is your God," imprinted on the bills. He also notices devices at every traffic light, broadcasting a hypnotic message that repeatedly commands people to sleep. George soon realizes that not all humans are alike. He observes with amazement as regular people casually interact with those who, through his glasses, appear monstrous. It becomes clear that these creatures hold positions of power and influence in society. Inside a supermarket, George's attention is drawn to a politician speaking on television. To his shock, the politician is also one of them. Unable to contain his laughter, he starts mocking the absurdity of it all. When he accidentally bumps into a woman, who also appears as a creature, he insults her in disbelief. Trying to expose the truth, he urges the people around him to see what he sees. However, his outburst only attracts suspicion. The woman discreetly speaks into her wristwatch, alerting others that someone can see their true form and providing his description. Upon receiving the alert, other aliens begin closing in on George. Panicked, he rushes into the street, unaware that many aliens are already watching him. Still enraged, he hurls insults at the monstrous woman. Moments later, disguised officers seize him, demanding to know where he got the glasses. George refuses to answer, even as they attempt to intimidate and persuade him to join their side. When he resists, the officers escalate their threats. However, George retaliates, overpowering them in a fight, seizing their weapons and eliminating them before making his escape. The commotion draws attention, and police cars soon swarm the area. Armed and on the run, George seeks refuge inside a bank, only to realize that a significant number of people inside are actually aliens. Fueled by adrenaline, he opens fire, targeting the creatures hiding among humans. One alien manages to send out a distress signal before vanishing into thin air, evading George's attack. As reinforcements arrive, he flees the bank, only to notice a drone tailing him. Acting fast, he shoots it down before dashing toward a nearby parking garage. Inside the garage, George encounters a striking woman named Holly. After confirming she is human, he takes her hostage and demands she drive him to her home, knowing it's his best chance of evading his relentless pursuers. As police units converge on the bank, Holly reluctantly helps him escape. Once inside her house, George collapses from exhaustion but still manages to explain his actions. Apologizing for dragging her into this, he warns her that their world is being controlled by sinister beings manipulating humanity. He urges her to put on the sunglasses to see the truth for herself, but she refuses, dismissing his claims as madness. While George struggles to stay awake, Holly quietly tries to move past him, but he remains alert, keeping a close eye on her. Eventually, he relaxes and asks about her profession. Holly reveals that she works as an assistant director in television. Realizing that the aliens use TV signals to control people, George sees an opportunity to disrupt their broadcast. However, before he can act, Holly suddenly smashes a bottle over his head and shoves him out of the window. George crashes onto the ground from the second floor but miraculously survives. Dazed and injured, he loses his sunglasses in the fall. Meanwhile, Holly contacts the police, reporting the incident and summoning law enforcement to her home. With authorities now hunting him down, George is forced into hiding once again. He takes shelter beneath a bridge and, after nightfall, sneaks into another neighborhood where he spends the night on the streets. The next morning, determined to continue the fight, he returns to the construction site in search of Frank, hoping to convince him to help expose the alien threat. Frank is horrified by George's actions, having just witnessed his friend engage in a mass shooting, eliminating numerous people. George insists that they weren't human but aliens in disguise. However, Frank refuses to listen, convinced that George has lost his mind, and tells him to leave. Determined to retrieve more sunglasses, George returns to the spot where he had hidden a box full of them, only to find the trash cans empty. Spotting a nearby garbage truck, he climbs into the back and digs through the waste, managing to salvage a few remaining pairs. Frank happens to witness George's desperate search. He hands George his paycheck, stating that he can no longer be involved. George pleads with Frank to put on the sunglasses and see the truth for himself, but Frank refuses, believing his friend has gone insane. Frustrated by Frank's stubbornness, George resorts to violence, punching him and initiating a brutal fight. The brawl is intense, with neither backing down, but in the end, George overpowers Frank and forces the sunglasses onto his face. Stunned, Frank finally sees the aliens hiding among them and is horrified by the truth. Now convinced, he joins George, and the two rent a room at a nearby motel to plan their next move. Frank assumes that there must be others who are aware of the aliens and suggests they find them. As they strategize, George opens up about his past. He recalls his childhood, growing up in severe poverty and suffering abuse from his father. The extreme class divide had long fueled resentment among ordinary people, and the aliens had exploited that bitterness for years. Now, George is determined to get revenge on those who ruined his life. The next morning, they meet Gilbert at the motel, another person wearing the special sunglasses. He invites them to a secret gathering of like-minded individuals happening that evening. Upon arrival, they encounter a diverse group of people who also recognize the alien invasion. The Resistance members swap their sunglasses for more advanced contact lenses, which provide a clearer and safer view of reality. Gilbert then explains in detail who these creatures are. The aliens have been recruiting humans by promising them wealth and power in exchange for loyalty. To them, Earth is nothing more than a temporary business venture, a planet to exploit for resources before they move on. They are responsible for global catastrophes and climate change, manipulating events to serve their interests. Once Earth is depleted, they plan to invade and enslave new planets. One of the Resistance members presents an alien wristwatch, which Frank takes an interest in. This advanced device allows aliens to communicate and teleport freely, but the Resistance has yet to crack its code. Gilbert then addresses the group, stating that they are still not strong enough for an all-out assault. However, the determined fighters insist that action must be taken immediately. Gilbert manages to calm them down, suggesting that their priority should be locating the source of the alien broadcast and disrupting it to free humanity from its trance. Holly suddenly appears at the meeting and provides a clue about where the transmission signal might be coming from. Nervously fidgeting with George's sunglasses, she apologizes for attacking him earlier. Before they can discuss further, police forces storm the room and open fire. Chaos erupts as most of the Resistance members are gunned down while attempting to escape. However, George, Frank, and Holly manage to evade the attack and flee the building unharmed. Armed and ready, the trio fights back against the alien forces before taking refuge in a narrow alleyway. George insists on heading straight into the heart of the battle to find Holly, but Frank stops him, warning him of the extreme danger. Instead, Frank turns his attention to the alien wristwatch, trying to understand how it works. In the process, he unintentionally activates the device, opening a mysterious portal to another realm. With the police closing in on their hideout, George and Frank realize they have no choice but to leap into the portal. They find themselves inside a vast underground alien base, surrounded by mysterious writings in an unfamiliar language. Cautiously, they move through a dimly lit corridor and come across an alien security checkpoint. The disguised alien soldiers report over their radios that the operation to eliminate the resistance has been a success. Satisfied with their victory, they leave to celebrate, allowing George and Frank to proceed toward the distant sounds echoing down the hallway. Following the noise, the friends stumble upon a lavish banquet where a well-dressed man is delivering a speech in praise of the alien alliance. He proudly announces that the aliens are on the verge of complete global domination, which will bring immense wealth and power to the human elite who have allied with them. He then presents statistical data showcasing their success, prompting cheers and applause from the audience. An unexpected encounter occurs when one of the former residents of the resistance camp approaches them. Now aligned with the aliens, he mistakenly assumes George and Frank have also joined their cause and is puzzled by their ragged appearance. Eager to help them assimilate, he offers a guided tour of the base, leading them to an alien-controlled spaceport where extraterrestrials disguised as humans prepare for interplanetary travel. The tour continues into the backstage area of a television studio, which serves as the central command for the alien operation. Here, a powerful satellite transmits a signal worldwide, keeping humanity under mind control. Seizing an opportunity, George cunningly flatters their guide into granting them access to the broadcast room. However, the guards refuse to let them pass without the required credentials. Left with no alternative, the friends resort to violence, opening fire on the aliens. Their former acquaintance intervenes, attempting to dissuade them from resisting. He explains that the aliens control every aspect of human life and urges them to embrace the new order, promising rewards for their loyalty. But George and Frank refuse to betray humanity. Suddenly, a soldier bursts into the room, and the traitor takes advantage of the distraction to teleport away. Wasting no time, the friends grab their weapons and fight their way through the studio, reaching the main control room where human collaborators work to maintain the alien broadcast. Desperate to find Holly, George questions the employees, but none of them know her whereabouts. However, he discovers that the hypnotic signal originates from the rooftop. Without wasting time, he and Frank head upstairs, encountering Holly along the way. She has managed to survive. Fighting off alien attackers, the trio battles their way to the top floor. Just as it seems they have an ally, Holly reveals her true colors. Without hesitation, she shoots Frank in the head and proceeds toward the rooftop. George follows and finds the massive satellite dish responsible for broadcasting the alien signal. As he prepares to destroy it, Holly sneaks up behind him, gun drawn, and demands he surrender. Refusing to give in, he shoots her first, then turns his weapon on the satellite. The moment the dish is destroyed, helicopters open fire on George. Mortally wounded, he defiantly raises his middle finger at the aliens as he takes his final breath. With the signal broken, the world is finally freed from its illusion. People everywhere begin to see the horrifying truth. Aliens have been living among them, blending into society, hosting television programs, frequenting local establishments, acting in films, and even forming relationships with unsuspecting humans. Thanks to one drifter from Colorado, humanity has awakened from its long slumber. Comment what you feel about the movie.